Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate everybody stopping by real quick, taking a look at my video. So, as always, for all of my people in the Philippines, kamusta na, magandang umaga, magandang hapon, magandang araw, magandang gabi, kamusta na. Appreciate you guys very much. Maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking my video, aking mga kaibigan. I'm South Tayo, 7:31 in the morning. Appreciate you guys very much. For anybody who is coming from Armenia, I would say Voljubin, and Inch Beses, and merci for coming by and taking a look at my video real quick. And anybody who is coming from Russia, I will say Privyet, Kakadela, Spasibo for coming by and taking a look at my video real quick. And so what I have for you guys right now is I have the final game between Levon Aronian and Vladislav Artemiev. So it is round 8, and I believe it's game 2. So it's the penultimate game between these two players. So if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. All right, quick. Yeah, okay, all right. So we got d4, g6, e4, bishop to g7. We see knight to f3. We see d6, and then we see c3. So we do have the modern defense, and it's the Geller system. As you guys probably are aware, I mean, you also have the ability just to go knight to c3, or you also, can go, c4. Knight will come to c3, knight to f6, bishop to e2. This would be the Pierce classical. So some of you guys, if you guys just kind of do, basic development, you probably have seen it. But we do see c3, very logical move, because, at some point, you guys know c5 is probably going to come. And to try to mess up your center here. So I mean c3, just allows you to kind of let's just say, for example, like if the pawn takes here, you take with this pawn type deal. So it does allow you to get your your structure with pawns instead of taking back with pieces. So we do see knight coming to f6, very easily defendable. Bishop to d3. We see castles, and then we do see c5. Like I said, I mean, this is a really, really beautiful center for white. So black, is going to hate on it. So black is going to be a hater. So they're going to throw C5 out there. So we see H3. We don't want to see, usually when you're trying to undermine the center, especially the D4, E4 points, these bishop, pins can be really annoying, because, you could be losing a pawn. So we do see queen to C7. We see rook over to E1. We got E5. Bishop comes to e3. We see b6, knight b to d2. We see knight to c6. So as you guys can see, I mean, black and white both, they're pretty much, gotten their development rolling. You just kind of have this bishop and the queen for, the bishop to get developed for black and the queen for white. And, you're pretty much a-okay. So we do see rook to c1. As I always say, it's always beneficial when you put a rook or a heavy piece like a bishop or something like that opposite a queen. Because, of course, you have situations where, like, let's say, for example, you take pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4. You're not really comfortably taking back with the pawn, because after knight takes d4, I mean, you're pretty messed up. I mean, you can play the bishop over here, but you're going to be looking at bishop to b5, and that's just not really where you want to be. So as you can see, it looks a lot different when you're sitting in this position. It looks like, it's not possible that these pieces are going to get connected, but you make a few moves, and you kind of see it go on. So you do see rook to e8 by black. And this is the novelty of the game. So this is the first time we've seen that. So we do see d5. This is very, typical in these type of structures. Usually you'll have like a King's Indian, or you'll have like a modern, or, maybe even like a King's Indian, King's Indian Larson. Because, I'm more like a d4, c4 type player. So, usually you kind of have the c4 pawn and you push d5. And you're definitely inconveniencing this knight. I mean, the knight now has to kind of find somewhere to go. And if you've already played c3, I mean, there's not a whole lot of real estate that the knight actually has to try to put themselves on. So we do see knight back to e7. We see b4. We have knight back to d7. And this is just simply opening up this bishop on this diagonal. Also, it's preparing an f5 pawn push. Trying to, just further try to break up white center. Because as you can see, I mean, these pawns are just really, really monstrous. So we see knight down to f1. We see c4, trying to get your own little counterattack. So we do see bishop coming back to c2. We see f5, the push I was telling you about. So we do see pawn takes f5, pawn takes f5. Now, I mean, these pawn, pushes can be a little bit annoying because, I mean, your bishops are like really nice. So you definitely don't want them to get shut out with a move like f4. So we try to get the bishop outside the chain. So bishop comes to g5, and we see e4 in this position. Just attacking the knight. I mean, just like saying, hey, man, you messed my knight up, so let me mess your knight up, right? So if you want to go ahead and pause the video and see what Levon Aronian does to take care of the situation that he's presented with, go ahead and do so now. All right, cool. So Levon Aronian does not care. He literally just leaves his knight right there and just says, forget about it. Forget about it, The strongest possible move in the position, there's actually two different moves that you can make that pretty much end up being the same thing. There's either knight to g3 or there's knight to e3. Once the pawn takes here, you're going to be moving, you're going to be taking on f5. So just what we saw in the game, like I said, was knight to g3. Pawn took on f3. And it is at this point that like an avalanche, just kind of starts happening. The game just kind of just like plummets from this point on. And Levon Aronian, just pretty much takes hold of the spaceship and says, man, we're just going to go to oblivion with this game. So pawn takes f3. We see knight takes f5. And, you do kind of have a little bit of problems because this rook is undefended and this knight is kind of pinned. So we do see knight to e5 trying to plug the hole. So we have knight takes g7, king takes g7, and then we have rook takes e5. This is like the literal top move in the position. You're going to be deflecting this pawn over like what we see in the game, and you're going to be pushing d6. And now you have just forked this queen and this knight. So we see queen over to d7. And I mean, just to back up real quick, there was a side note after pawn takes f3. You don't want to go rook takes e7. Because rook would take e7, bishop would take e7. Then you go ahead and do the same thing with bishop to knight to e5. Bishop would come down to g5, and then you have queen to f7. And as you guys can see, everything is pretty much defended. You do have this rook kind of in the corner, but you have this really nice knight in the center of the board. You have this pawn that's able to possibly roll, and everything is fairly equal. So it's a little bit more active for black. So getting to what we had in the game, like I said, we did have rook takes e5. Rook takes e5, pawn takes e5, d6, and then queen stepped over to d7. It's very logical. I mean, you can definitely go bishop takes e7. This is actually a good position for white. It's just not quite so winning. But what we actually saw in the game was something I mentioned a second ago, recognizing that we have this rook in the corner. Let me go ahead and win a pawn and then attack that that rook in the corner at the same time. So we do see queen takes f3. And then the knight comes to g6, and just allowing the capture of this rook. There really wasn't a good way to defend against it because you were looking at queen, placing a check on the king over here on f6, and this bishop is slicing in and stuff like that. So it's pretty deadly looking. And knight to g6 does defend the knight a little bit. So we do see queen taking a8, bishop to b7. We see queen taking a7. We have queen to c6. Why not threaten checkmate? As I always say, this is a mighty juicy looking square. So we do block that by f3. Rook comes to a8. We've actually reached another point in the game that if you do want to stop the video and see how Levon Aronian gets out of this, because it just looks like the queen is trapped. I mean, you just really can't move it anywhere. So it kind of seems like you have to just give up the queen on a8. So, like I said, if you want to go ahead and stop the video and see what Levon Aronian does to try to, get out of this position, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So basically what he does is he threatens to get his own queen after you were to take my queen. So it'd pretty much just be a trade. So he actually pushes d7. So if you found d7, congratulations for trying to, find some type of counterplay. Also, I mean, you are, threatening this possibly at some point. So that can be kind of annoying. But I mean, you are, of course, if the rook takes on a8, you're going to be looking at queen here. And you pretty much just like moved your queen to a completely different square, basically. So, you're pretty much still in the same position. But After d7, we do see queen taking d7, and this perfectly deflects the queen away because now we have the ability to take on b6. And as you can see, you know, white is just up a crazy amount of pawns. They're up 3 pawns. Of course, white is going to attack the queen. And after the queen comes to e3, we are going to see rook takes a2. But, you know, white is still up a crazy amount of pawns, and they have a crazy attack going. So they do see rook coming to d1. The queen sidesteps to e6. We see queen to c5. Rook takes c2, but we do see queen to c7 with check. You know, about to, you know, take that bishop on b7. So the king comes up to g8. We see queen taking b7. Knight back to f8, but we actually just put our knight in a pin because you do see rook to d8. And it's actually a little bit dangerous to take this pawn. You know, what Artemiev does is he just takes on c3. But there's so much heat going in your position. I mean, this rook is pinning down this knight. This queen has the ability to come up to this rank here. This bishop is live, so it has the ability to cut this king from moving. So I feel like, I mean, the situation is just a little too dangerous to be grabbing pawns. You have to try to figure out some type of way to defend your position. So we do see bishop to e7. And this is like really like... This is depressing personally, like looking at this, because now this queen is like, I mean, where do you put it? You might could put it there, but I mean, this knight is sad. Like, this knight is crying. Like, look at the tears. It's like, look, there's a tear. Here's another tear. Like, there's tears on this knight. Ah, man. So we see rook to c1 with check, but then we see king to h2. And it is actually in this position that Vladislav Artemiev does resign the game because there are no more checks to play. And I mean, how do you defend this position? There's really nothing to do because, I mean, the only thing really to do is to move your queen up, but you're going to be looking at rook takes, queen takes, bishop takes, king takes, and, you know, just kind of pick like what you want to do. I mean, you know, you're probably going to go ahead and do something like check, and then king's going to come down. You're going to play another check. You know, but then, I mean, you can't push pawn because there's going to be queen to f4 with check, and then this rook is going to start crying tears everywhere. Like, that's all tears this rook is crying. So you definitely don't want to see that. So like I said, after we see the king sidestepping to h2, it is safe from further checks, and it's good to go. So that is that game. And this was the game that sealed the Goldmoney Asian Rapid for Levon Aronian. So he is the winner of the tournament. So congrats to Levon Aronian. It's been a while since he's won something. It's pretty much been Wesley So, Magnus Carlsen, and I think Timur Rajabov, he got one too. So, and then Mamedirov got another, you know, got a Grand Chess Tour, you know, tournament and stuff like that. So it's been a little time since he's been at the top of the podium, but I appreciate you guys very much. Like I said, for all my people in the Philippines, salamat aking makaibigan. I got, you know, spasibo for my people that are coming from Russia, and merci to anybody who is coming from Armenia, and I'll see y'all next time.